Do you like anagrams, kids? Do you like those Find the Pictures games on Steam that are partially strung together with a lethargic plot? Do you like puzzles that don't explain their concepts all too well and force the players to look up a walkthrough to understand that doing exactly what the game is asking you still doesn't solve the puzzle for some inexplicable reason? Did you enjoy The Seventh Guest? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then strap in to the burnt-out husk we like to call a good idea and prepare for a fast trip down Nostalgia Highway. Only problem being that the seatbelts don't work and the tires are made from the skinny one-ply, rough-as-sandpaper shit tickets they give out at work. I am Brother Bob from the Order of the Ram, and today I'd like to talk to you about The 11th Hour. The 11th Hour, made by Trilobite Games and released by Virgin Interactive, was made 2 years after The Seventh Guest, and is set 60 years after the event of The Seventh Guest. The hope with this sequel was to make everything bigger and better, and to punch up the entertainment and Hollywood aspect of the first. What they managed to do was make a more confusing game, a game that takes everything from the original and keeps some aspect of it, while still warping it in some twisted way, contorting the limbs in ways that should never bend, hearing sinews stretch and bones snap until a broken heap lies on the floor, awaiting sustenance and the will to live. Gone is the quirky charm of the original.
It's all right, son. You're okay. Don't worry. It's just an illusion. An illusion. An illusion. An illusion.
Where moving at a snail's pace through Stoff's mansion was problematic, but a godsend compared to the lifelessness of this game. The unlikable protagonist that matches the unlikable script, and god-awful anagrams and wordplay that make up more of the game's puzzles. Something with less gore and an alleged more mature story, one that took itself more seriously. One that would try to capitalize on the FMV gaming it created, only to be left in the dust by those who came after The Seventh Guest. Someone else made a better and spooky mansion game in 1995, and her name was Roberta Williams, and the game was Phantasmagoria. That's right, The Seventh Guest may have convinced a generation of people to go out and procure a CD-ROM drive, but it never followed up with a game that really put the technology to good use. Phantasmagoria would come out the same year and go on to sell substantially more than its contemporaries. Roberta Williams, the creator and designer behind the King's Quest series, made Phantasmagoria in a way that mimicked a lot of what made the King's Quest series so popular. A game that wouldn't askew from the norm, but instead used technology to enhance a more mature story that still kept to the roots of adventure gaming. The Seventh Guest was a game that removed itself from the standard practice of adventure games at the time. The idea of items that were picked up and kept in your inventory to use on other objects, or dialogue choices that were given to the player for backstory or hints of what to do next, were thrown out in a decision to streamline the gameplay. The gameplay instead was designed as more of a loop, the idea being that the player would walk into a room, find a self-contained puzzle, solve said puzzle, then retreat to a short cutscene that would further the story and ultimately open up more areas in the house for more puzzles. The idea was simple, yet in the 11th hour they decided to tweak things in just a slight enough way that upends the joy that I would get from the previous entry. Sure, you can pass a puzzle and get a cutscene, but now a lot of them are relegated to short clips that I would assume are supposed to have the effect of building the intrigue. But instead they're just throwaway.
I have to get out of here. I'm scared.
Wait.
See, the game has 4 hours that you have to get through, each one allowing you into different parts of the dilapidated mansion, and a different set of puzzles and anagrams to solve. At the end of the hour, you are given a 5 to 10 minute cutscene that's all FMV that will use the clips you saw earlier to help further the plot. Speaking of plot, our lavishly produced and self-indulgent opening sets up the game. A man is watching TV and being told that the search for Robin Morales, a TV producer from a show ironically called Case Unsolved, has been called off, and that she was looking into the story that involved the Stauff mansion from the first game.
Mansion of Henry Stauff.
Apologies, I didn't realize you had to swallow that word. The man on the couch is revealed to be Carl Denning, alleged snuggle-bug of missing Robin. Oh, and the reporter also alluded to a bunch of murders and disappearances happening from around the house. Carl receives a ring at the doorbell and finds a package containing a game book that has a video of Robin crying on camera asking him for help. Wait, did the writers of Resident Evil 7 just steal this scene from a mostly forgotten game? Well, at least they put it to fair use. So Carl sets off to save his producer, mounting his motorcycle and riding off to the Stauff mansion. On his way, in a flashback, we find out that Carl and Robin were indeed together.
I have a rule about people I work with.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't get involved.
Uh-huh. I have the same rule.
Been thinking about breaking this rule.
So am I.
And we're treated to what the 90s thought was mature for video games. That's right, TNA. This looks like the bad softcore stuff you'd see in Red Shoe Diaries.
Arousing.
But when we were finished, I had a new appreciation for the words
Erotic, sensual.
Oh, never mind. 2 seconds later into the cutscene, Robin tells Carl that she wants to call it quits because people are starting to talk about how they slept together so that she could get a producer job. And being the walking embodiment of a living latrine, he agrees to the sentiment, while also telling her that she's good at the sex. Sure, Carl, that should smooth things right over. Because if there's one thing I know about women, it's that when you insult their integrity, it's best to follow it up by telling them how good they are at touching your penis. Robin then goes on to say that she's going to go to Harley-on-Hudson, the fictitious town where all the murders are happening, where the Stoff mansion resides. Carl, being incredibly chivalrous, states that maybe she'll become one of the missing people there. Cut back to Carl Denning, low-life shitbag coming up on the Stoff mansion. That, contrary to what the first game shows, is not located on the edge of a cliff, and is confused that the door doesn't magically open for him. The device he was mailed earlier beeps, giving him a riddle to knock on the door 3 times. It works, allowing him in. What door he opened, I have no idea, since when you enter the mansion and turn around, you see this. Now Carl is in the mansion. The way the story beats are told from here on out are bizarre at best. When you solve a puzzle, there's maybe a 50-50 chance that you'll get a random video clip of people, a situation, or more than likely a combination of the two that are taken out of context and make no sense. At the end of the hour, since this game is cut into hourly chunks, they played the original clip as it's intended on being seen, so it's best to go from the end of the scenes except for the last hour. Not like any of this matters in the end, but for an idea of where things went wrong, you're going to have to bear with me. A video shows Robin first heading into town, and after a prolonged segment that has her going back and forth with the waitress, because, get it? Robin's from the city, and these are supposed to be low-rent bumpkins. Just simple folk who don't even have the common decency of stocking up on muffins, and instead only have donuts. The class divide. After that exaggerated exchange, Robin asks the waitress if she's Eileen Wiley, allegedly the only person to have come out of the Stoff mansion, although missing her hand. Apparently Eileen's story on the hand is that a guard dog ripped it clean off and Robin leaves the restaurant. We are then introduced to buxom Marie Wiley, looking for a man named Chuck at a hotel. She finds his room and he promptly tells her that
I've only got a few minutes. Come on, Marie, let's hurry. Let's get in bed.
And Marie drops the bomb that, wait for it, he's a married man. See, this game deals with complicated issues, like infidelity. Well, that and all the men in this game are just portrayed as horn dogs. Too bad they couldn't give him anything else like a personality. Robin is then seen by the bank of a river coming up on some rocks splattered with blood, when she's stopped by possibly the most ineffectual sheriff ever written. When stopping Robin, he remarks that it looks like she's looking for a crime scene, then tells her, you found it. You did good for a TV person. Did good at what? What did she do? Walk along the bank in a desperate search of a crime scene? Something that's never brought up, ever? The last scene sets up that she wants to interview people, sure, figure out the mansion, yep. Actively look for bloodied rocks next to the riverbank? Not a chance. Maybe next she could wish for the murderer's confession conveniently sticking out of a trash can. The cop's name is Jim Martin, chief of police. Robin remarks how impressive it is, but Jim just tells her that it's him and another guy on the force. Robin Clouseau thinks that all the murders and disappearances in the area are related, but Jim doesn't share the same sentiment, claiming that the Stoff mansion is just a ghost story. Jim also doubles down on Eileen's story, but leads her to Dr. Thornton, who dealt with Eileen on the night of the accident. In the present, Carl gets another message on his gamebook, and we see Robin, somewhere. This part of Stoff's mansion is actually never seen, so I honestly have no idea where she could be. It kinda looks like some steps leading to nuclear waste or something, with a Japanese octopus sex monster reaching out for her. Carl calls out to her and she can seemingly hear him. It then cuts to a wheelchair-bound woman seeing the same feat as Carl, and she questions where Carl is. Back in the past, Robin arrives at the doctor's office, which apparently in a small town is just a house, and she turns to look back at Jim probably 6 or 7 times if the game wasn't subtle enough about the fact that they're romantically interested in each other. Inside the office, it turns out that Marie is the receptionist at the doctor, and after a little tension and a lot of hassle, Robin talks to the doctor, and questions him about the night that Eileen came in with the missing hand. He goes on with the dog story, and we get sort of a flashback inception of Eileen with the missing hand. While all the questioning is happening, Marie is still listening to the conversation, and the doctor leads her towards a woman named Samantha, who had entered the house with Eileen that night, and when she came out, she was paralyzed and bound to a wheelchair. Coincidentally, it's at this point that Carl sees a ghost of Eileen from the past looking for Samantha on a way out. Marie and Chuck are seen near a river, trying to figure out how to make out, and Marie pulls a knife on him, only to put it away again and continue making out. This is the subtle way that the people making this game figured they could show that Marie's dangerous and off-kilter, maybe a little crazy. Immediately after this pointless scene, We see Marie talking to Eileen, and it's revealed, poorly, that Eileen is Marie's mother. Eileen half-heartedly tries to condemn Marie for seeing Chuck since he's married, and they end up calling each other whores. See, this game's plot also deals with real-world problems. Not this picturesque family that people had laid out before us on television. No. These actors are real.
I care. You'll get a reputation, Marie. I don't want people calling my daughter a tramp.
Yeah? Well, like I said, like mother, like daughter.
Marie!
Save it.
Marie!
What?
Will you be home tonight?
Maybe.
Next thing you know, the mom's going to tell her that she's a failure, and she's doing nothing with her life except for sitting in the basement at this weird cult place and trying to make YouTube videos. We cut back to Robin, and once again she finds herself near the river, and we're treated to long shots of the water and Robin running in slow motion. This scene literally means nothing. There's nothing added or taken away with this scene, simply filler for no reason, other than for her to run into Jim, who in turn asks her if she's okay, then makes another baffling statement.
I don't know what I was doing.
Whatever it was, you were moving with impressive speed.
Who fucking talks like this? I honest to God thought this game was going to go with the science fiction ending at this point. It would be revealed that Jim is actually an alien. This is solely based off the fact that his statements are 100% contradictory to how humans speak. There's more to this scene, but nothing that furthers the plot other than, hey, these two bought tickets to Bone Town. They're all both awkwardly sitting at the bus stop, making googly eyes at each other, shyly looking away and rubbing their arms, unsure of how to feel in this moment. I should honestly hate this more, but this is the only character development that happens in this entire game. A man is being hunted down and killed, and it turns out that Chuck is the killer. The dead man's corpse leaves blood trails on the stones that Robin had seen earlier. So I guess this is a flashback of a flashback at one point. And then his head melted away. Did the writer of this game fall asleep while watching Terminator 2? What the fuck is going on? Robin tracks down Samantha in what looks like a dressed-up community hall, while Samantha is seen playing the original Seventh Guest, because sure, why not? Samantha is abrupt at Robin's proddings, regurgitating the dog story from Eileen and the two other people who live in the town. She's also being guarded, only betraying herself when Robin tries to connect the recent murders to the house, feeling that she's getting nowhere when she leaves. Chuck is seen grabbing what looks like a body wrapped in a blanket and brings it to the Stoff mansion. He brings the body to the door and knocks. The door opens on its own and the body is hauled away with unseen hands. Having a change of heart, Samantha finds Robin at her motel and tells her the story of what happened that night. Samantha explains that 20 years ago, her and Eileen went to Stoff's mansion to find Peter and Charlie, two boys who had disappeared after they said they were going to break in, Samantha goading Eileen into coming. Samantha says that she was sexually assaulted, somehow by the house. She warns that the house is somehow the embodiment of Henry Stoff, that the two are one and the same. After the house was apparently finished with the girls, they let Eileen and Samantha go, but not before Eileen got her hand stuck in the iron wrought gates at the front door, cutting her hand off in the process. Samantha goes on to explain that her and Eileen became pregnant, and fearing the worst, Samantha got an illegal abortion, leading to her becoming wheelchair bound. Eileen, on the other hand, couldn't go through with it and gave birth to Marie. She believes that since Marie is a child of the house, that she's a being of pure evil, and that the killings could probably be traced back to her somehow. Robin confronts Eileen in the diner again with the story that Samantha had just told her. Eileen refutes the claims and tells Robin to go there herself if she wants to know what's up with the house. As she leaves, Marie is seen over at a different table, listening in, and her and Eileen share a stare? I'm not sure if this is supposed to convey that Marie didn't know the house she came to be, or she just doesn't like what Robin said about her. Who knows? Eileen doesn't appear in the rest of this game at this point. She basically disappears. Marie tells Chuck that it's time again, implying that her and Chuck are behind the murders, and tells him to go murder Robin. Chuck doesn't want to at first, since she's well known and people come looking for her, but reluctantly agrees when Marie both simultaneously threatens him with Stoff and tries to encourage him with sex. The old upper-downer situation. Chuck goes to Robin's motel room, stabs the first thing he sees in the bed, which ends up being Jim, then removes the body and all of his belongings before Robin comes out of the shower. She was already partway through. I felt like this scene should have been sped up a little bit and yakety sax was playing in the background. Regardless of that, Chuck brings the body to the house again, and this time he's pulled through the door, only to find what I'm guessing is the old woman from the first game. There's a back and forth between them and a soup pot, and Stoff's there. This is amazing. Just look.
Ready?
Ready? For what?
Soup's on.
Soup's on. Soup's on.
How about a chuck roast?
The chuck steak. Chuck him into the soup.
Robin finally comes to the mansion, and Samantha is seen watching her on a camera that's somewhere, pleading her not to go in. But then she does, and Samantha gets scared. If she was that scared, she probably would have warned her before, but then again, after telling Robin the events of what happened to her in the house, you would think that would actually be warning enough. But fuck it, I don't care. Robin encounters a weird doll that cries out for its mommy, and Stoff confronts her, playing on her dreams and wondering what it is that she desires. Stoff also implies that the house needs to eat, needs to be fed. He tells her that the house has powers, and tells her that all of her desires can be made possible. As Robin is about to ask for what she desires, Samantha can be seen watching her through a camera, pleading for her not to say the words, and decides to ring up Carl on his Gamebook PDA device, showing him a live feed of the current events. Carl calls out to Robin and she responds. Stoff keeps tempting her, and soon after the feed cuts. Samantha comes on explaining that she sent Carl the Gamebook and wants him to defeat the evil in the house, only to take back that sentiment a second later and tell him that the house is too powerful and he needs to leave. Carl dismisses this idea and says that he can't leave Robin. This leads to a sequence that gives you a choice of who to save and what ending you want. Carl looks for Robin and comes upon Stoff, who plays up a bad version of Let's Make a Deal. He then tells Carl he has to choose of one of 3 doors, each with either Marie, Samantha, or Robin behind them. These are the choices for the end game. If you choose Marie, who basically tells Carl that he can use her as a blow-up doll, they end up in bed, and in the height of passion, she turns into Stoff.
What a deal. I'll let you in on a little secret. Because you're so special.
And he can be seen after, eating ribs, morphing back and forth between Marie to himself, implying that they ate Carl. If you pick Robin, they share an embrace and walk through the door, only to cut to a news report that Carl Denning was found washed up on a shore, dead, while on his honeymoon with Robin, making her the president of Stoff Broadcasting System. And finally, if you choose Samantha, who is displayed on TV, Carl touches the screen and brought to her community hall area, and is told that he made the right choice, explaining that Robin was too far gone to be saved. And as they watch on, they see a video of the Stoff mansion on fire. The biggest problem that I had with the story of the 11th Hour was tone. The game flips from one extreme to the next with little or no thought behind it.
There isn't a day that goes by that my mind isn't haunted by the memory. Everything that's happened since.
You'd better hide.
The more mature and serious tone that this game wanted to have is always second-guessed or trampled on for a multitude of reasons, mainly the characters. Stoff is seemingly more goofy than he was in the last one, chiding you with more and more childish jabs that sound like something a school bully would say at recess than a man of pure evil.
That's all, Carl.
Additionally, all of the characters are so forgettable and throwaway. Their personalities are more one-dimensional and flat, and they barely have any sort of arc at all. For a game that wanted to be more mature and grown up, a game that had subjects like sexual assault, murder, abortions, adultery, and torture with absolutely nothing to say about it. You don't care about any of these characters, so what happens to them is never really given any sort of gravity. Carl, the character you're playing as, is given 4 cutscenes aside from the ones that bookend the game. If you don't count the run-ins with the ghost from the last game, which I don't because it's only implied that Carl is seeing those. 2 of those are from him coming across Samantha and Eileen as apparitions in the mansion with no dialogue spoken between them. And the other 2 are talking to Samantha for the first time, and to Stoff talking to him. Carl is portrayed as an asshole with a big ego because of how he treats Robin at the start of the game. Him going to save her doesn't redeem what an asshole he was if literally he does nothing with his character. He doesn't realize that maybe he was in the bad rather than second-guessing the fact that Robin went off to die. And while Samantha's ending is considered canonical, I would honestly say that the Marie one's probably the most accurate. Through the little that we know about him, Carl is shown to be only interested in dipping his wick, so it's only appropriate that's how he meets his end. The same go for people like Jim who are there to be killed, which is another sticking point. All these murders happen, and yet the only two cops in town are Jim and another talked about yet unseen other person. Yet the murders and disappearances make the national news. I can suspend my disbelief, but this game's plot holes, narrative contrivances, and vapid attempts at a mature story all hold together in a vain attempt to create a cohesive and interesting story. Then there's the acting. The actor playing Jim has bizarre lines to read.
Yeah, it's blood.
I was just...
I know what you were doing. You were looking for the scene of a crime. You found it. You did good.
Then Samantha is given what's supposed to be a heartfelt moment, talking about her sexual assault, and the actress playing Robin has the worst line delivery in the entire game.
We were raped.
Oh no, by those boys?
Carl sounds bored most of the time, which I guess is fitting considering the type of character Carl is. And as said before, Stoff is more of a hack than before.
It's sweet, Marie. She can be yours absolutely anytime, night or day.
Anytime.
Imagine the hours of enjoyment, the fun you'll have with sweet Marie.
This could have worked with the plot that was something silly like the first game, where the spooky nature of the game was very tame and PG. The other bizarre choice was trying to interject the original characters from the first game with absolutely no context. While these are more visually interesting cutscenes in the game, they add absolutely nothing to the overall plot, other than to say, boo, you're in a mansion of spookiness now. See, this is so weird. And out there, oh man, look at me, I'm a dog now. The questionable acting and script would have helped solidify the goofy nature of the plot and setting. Instead, they tried to interject some complexity into something that never needed it. It's like putting a clock in a pen. I don't need that. Put a clock on the wall or my phone. I'm not that much of a busy man. Take my eyes off what I'm writing long enough to look at the time. Well, what am I, some sort of high-rise big shot? I got all the time in the world. I can look at clocks for days. Speaking of bloated design choices, there's the treasure hunt puzzle aspect of the game. The treasure hunts start off by giving you a cryptic clue that's either wordplay, a coded message,
Gadi od mipi nrimmi stimf zu dritmu zervmid aloidijet ik pit the jip jer kitimf
or a goddamn anagram. Now, I hate anagrams, but these ones are a special kind of stupid. They're more than likely to be one word or even part of a word in the sentence, so I'm not even rearranging the entire message, but now I need to pinpoint the specific word in order to progress. But wait, fret not. Let loose those bonds on the short and curlies because there's a hint system. 2 to 3 are given just before it gives you the answer. I'll slap some jam between my cheeks and call me a sandwich because don't that beat all. Except it only gives you the item that you're looking for, not its location. So now you have to meander throughout the house in a vain attempt to find an item that the game wants you to find. Making things better, some of these items may not be accessible beforehand, meaning that while you're doing some other puzzle, you could possibly make a mental note of where that item is, so when it comes time to backtrack later, you can easily find it. Nope. Not the way this game plays. Sometimes you may never know where an item is actually located. And to add insult to injury, like a 7 layers of hell game design, some of these items aren't even illuminated at all, or are hiding in the most ill-lit corners of the room. This additional gameplay was Frankensteined onto this artificially to extend its playtime. This made all the more obvious by the fact there are only 13 puzzles in this game compared to the 22 in the last one. An additional 4 games are added to this count, but they're more of a beat the AI variety. In the AI-driven games, you face off against Stoff at the end of 4 of the 5 hours that the game occurs over. Like the last game, the AI is incredibly difficult, although not impossible, thankfully. The worst part about the way this is handled is if you want the 3 endings. The game only lets you save before the final game, so you'll need to beat it 3 times to get all the endings. The puzzles themselves range from okay to broken. An early puzzle involving a cash register, which was barely visible, you're supposed to even out the numbers from one side to the other. When I attempted to do this, I got the numbers correct, but the game didn't end. I looked up a walkthrough since I was stumped on it, and it turns out there's like 4 different solutions for this puzzle, and if you don't get them exactly right, you fail the puzzle. Another sliding puzzle that you have to rearrange a mirror for is also annoying because The flashlight's set to the center of the screen so you can't see the corners of the screen to make out what piece you have to slide over. Other puzzles feel like a slog simply because of the length of certain animations or the length of jabs that Stoff throws at you and pauses gameplay when they're said.
Can't function without your cue cards.
The 11th Hour feels like a game that was meant to follow the 7th Guest as soon as possible, but because of delays came out when other developers were making their own mark. The before-mentioned Phantasmagoria came out the same year and Gabriel Knight 2 not long after. These games would also deal with more mature subject matter than the developers had previously done, but they stuck to a formula that worked so well with players years before with adventure games. One where you could talk to other players, develop backdrop to the game, explore the characters more thoroughly. The 11th Hour feels like a game that tried to buck this trend. The 7th Guest worked because of the nature of who you played as and the rest of the characters being dead. You got to see vignettes of ghosts in the house while they attempted to reach their goals. The story was much more simple, and this worked out fine. The Stoff puzzles also worked in this way because the ghost tried to solve them once before as a test of sorts. In this game, where there's no connection from the puzzles to the story and everything just feels disjointed. Speaking of disjointed, let's talk about the doors in this game. The Stoff mansion is adequately in ruins after years of neglect, and as such multiple doors are left hanging ajar, yet you can't enter them until you've progressed through enough of the game, and it tells you can. This left me checking my map constantly to see if I was on the right hour for the room to possibly be open, to find an item that may be in there that I needed for an anagram. It's tough to say how this game fell apart. The first game's popularity was enough to drive the sales of CD-ROM drives. The game mixing actual straightforward puzzles into a story-driven adventure is definitely something you don't see all too often, and maybe that alone is the reason for some praise, at least in part to the first game. Innovation is often smothered to make way for known quantities. The studio is too scared to make games that differ in their status quo, too scared that it might affect the bottom line. On the other hand, the story's subject matter was handled with all the skill and grace of a 2-year-old attempting to open a banana. In all, this whole game ends up being a bad hash, taking ingredients you think will taste amazing together only to find out that it tastes like vomit, and that some of the food you used had gone bad. Maybe it'd be a better idea just to go out and get some takeout instead.